Hey everyone, my name is Brian from Unity Media Network, the producer of the Monday Club, and I think it's Monday the 8th, I nearly forgot the date there. And I'm here with the two hosts who will be asking all the questions, Alan and Dean. How are you lads?
All right, lads, how are we getting on? Happy Monday.
And I think lads, you done a takeover last week, was episode 3.5. I couldn't be bothered to turn up, so you done something.
It was a coup d'etat.
It was the reverse of what you said the previous week, where it was going to be me and you. So we thought it was hilarious that it ended up being me and Dean.
Good anyway, and I think Dean, you said you had something to say about the voucher. I think you gave away a €30 voucher for online food or something like that.
Yeah, so because it was the first show of the month, we decided to do a voucher for €30 for Just Eat. You did the draw during the week, and the winner is Michael O'Sullivan. We'd all know him as Mick. So it was a great success. Thank you to everyone that took part as well.
Mick from Grattan.
Mick from Grattan, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Mick is a sound old fella.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Mick.
Yeah, so Mick will have a takeaway on us. Whenever he...
Well, not on us, hopefully, but
not on him either. Make sure all goes into the mouth now, mate. Even on that, lads, so we'll push on. Our guest today is an expat. He's living in Melbourne the last 10 years. He's hails from Inniscarra, and he wanted to give his views on what's going on over in Melbourne in the Irish community. And I think it's 7:30 in the morning for where he is. So without further ado, we'll bring on Brendan right after this.
G'day, mate. Let's put another shrimp on the barbie.
G'day, Brendan.
G'day, Brendan. G'day, Brendan.
That is shocking. Morning, lads.
Did you like it? I was saying I did. I was like, I'll just bring this up. No, it's like from Dumb and Dumber. Where are you from?
Yeah.
Austria. Oh, g'day, mate.
Brian, you went all out with the marketing budget.
Oh, that's my €2 gone.
No,
thanks for having me on, lads.
Not a bother. I suppose just to give the kind of backstory, but really, Brendan would have followed some of the Unity Media social media platforms last year. And
Alan, just on that point, if anybody sees the logo, it's upside down because it's the Tuesday Club for Brendan because it's 7:30 a.m. and we're on the other side in the past, and it's the Monday Club. Carry on.
I was wondering what I was going on with that. But so yeah, I obviously reached out to you and we said we'd try and catch up, but we put you in contact, if you remember, with PJ Coogan on the opinion line. Like that, they were reaching out to see what things are like for Cork people. So I suppose, Brendan, just to start off, you can just tell us, for people who, like, obviously we don't know you personally, so you might just tell us who you are, where you're from, and how you ended up over in Melbourne.
Yeah, cool. So from a place called Berrings in Inniscarra, and at 17 went to Dublin to study. So I was in Dublin for 9 years before I left Ireland. So this is back in like 2011 when like the recession, or the GFC as they call it here, was kind of kicking in. Things were getting really bad. I was working for Kerry Group at the time. I don't know if you know Denny Rashers and Sausages. So I used to look after the Denny brand. And look, at the time, I got an opportunity to take voluntary redundancy. And luckily, I got it anyways because I always wanted to go to Australia. It felt like a good time to actually get it done. So, I came here in 2011. And look, to be honest with you, after spending 2 or 3 weeks here, I kind of felt that I was staying around for a long time. So 10 years later, I'm now living with my wife and 2 dogs in Melbourne.
Fair play.
Just when you moved to Australia first, did you do traveling around or did you settle straight away?
Yeah, so Dean, like you're probably aware of this. When you come over, you get like a 12-month visa. So in order to get like a second 12 months, you have to do regional work. So I kind of backpacked around and did like random jobs like furniture removal just to kind of get my bearings in the city. But I actually spent 4 months on a sheep farm over in Western Australia. So I was like 2 hours inland from the sea in the middle of nowhere. My nearest neighbor was 20 kilometers away. The nearest pub was 18 kilometers away. Loved it. Like I was just out in the bush. Just an incredible experience.
That sounds mad. I think when you think of people that do go traveling, you know, obviously they experience the life and stuff. But a lot of people like yourself, Brendan, now you're there 10 years. When you look back and you realize, God, this is actually something that I imagined I would stay with very early on. And obviously that's as a result of a different way of life. Like for a Cork man living in any country, it must be weird. But what's it like now during COVID for you? Like how have you kind of got through the last almost 12 months?
Yeah, look, it's and again, as I was saying to you lads, like offline, like this isn't kind of like I'm sure the Australian experience is different to at home, but I might answer that by starting off in we went back home in March as part of our wedding, so we kind of eloped and did the small thing over here in Melbourne, but we came home and the idea was to do the family thing for a week. You know, bring our families together. They'd never actually met apart from our parents. Oh, there we go, on the ball.
See that there, yeah.
But the idea was we were off to London for a Spurs game and then off to Italy for the honeymoon. And we getting on the plane leaving Melbourne, we heard there was some sort of a virus, and we heard of this place called Wuhan that we'd never heard of, you know. And we landed and we started hearing some talk about a place called Lombardy. I'll never forget that. And it was literally day by day we were keeping an eye on this thing, and it was suddenly becoming a lot more real, you know. And in our first week, we changed our flights. We said, scrap Italy. There's no point in going there. At least let's get a weekend in London. So we had some sort of a break. We fly back from London. So that cost us a fortune. But then the very next day, we heard that Australia was shutting its borders. So we had to we had to cancel or rearrange our flights again. This time out of Dublin instead of London. This is in early March. Yeah. So we actually landed. We landed back in Australia the day that they had shut the borders. That you'd have to do your 2-week quarantine inside the hotel. So the whole thing kind of, as you can imagine, lads, like when you have a journey that long, you're still kind of jet lagged. And then suddenly you have this feeling that, shit, I need to get on a plane and get out of here again, you know? So there was a bit of drama with that, but it was the right decision. I'm glad we did it.
Mm.
Sorry, Brendan, sorry. When you came back then, how quick was it did you get back into the rhythm of the way it was before lockdown, or what changed in Australia for yourselves?
Yeah, so when we got back in, I think it was like a day or two before Paddy's Day. I remember this, right? Because I remember we were still in our honeymoon. We'd 4 weeks, and in hindsight, I should have gone back to work, but we sat at home for 4 weeks. But places started shutting very, very quickly. My wife, she was working for a big company. It's one of the main companies that does catering here in Australia. So they do all the big football stadiums, all the mining sites. And they were cancelling sporting occasions, events, gigs, left, right, and centre. So where it became very real for us very quickly is her first week back in Australia, she got a call saying, you know, you need to step down, or no, sorry, we're making all your team redundant, right? And she's like, that's a big team. So she was like, I'd rather it came from me as opposed to, you know, cold corporate or whatever. So she had to step down all of these people. Venues are closing left, right, and centre. Hospitality was the one that was hit the most. But I called out, the reason why I know it was Paddy's Day, we went on a bit of a pub crawl just in the local area because, you know, we'd nothing else to do. And that was the last day that, you know, the bars were allowed open. And I think in my Instagram story, I put up a few photographs here and there, and the comments we were getting from home from people going, what are you doing out? Why are you sitting so close to these people, you know? So it literally, it went from 0 to 100 very, very quickly. And then we just went into the strictest of lockdowns whereby, you know, we were only allowed out an hour a day for exercise. We had the 5K radius kind of restriction put in place. Obviously, there was no such thing as getting your hair cut, any of that kind of stuff. And yeah, we like returning from honeymoon, as it were, back to work. You're like, you have to get used to being on Zoom and team meetings from the get-go, you know. So yeah, it was interesting times.
Like one thing that I suppose really, Brendan, would strike me just watching the news and stuff, like at the moment we're in level 5. We have a 5k kilometre radius for exercise, and you're not supposed to travel unless you're travelling for work or essential items. Like lockdown over in Melbourne and in Australia, that meant lockdown. Like there was no kind of grey area. Is that a fair observation from us looking on? Like,
No, it was like, and I think back. So I went for a walk with Miriam yesterday, and I was like, remind me how bad it was, and I couldn't believe some of the things. But you're right, Alan. Like, if twice we got stopped by the police as to where we're going. My wife had to open the boot of her car to show the grocery shopping, and another time I had to show an email from my chiropractor to show I actually had an appointment. So that was like that's an example. It was pretty strict. We would be walking, you see the police pulling over. We live by the beach. Police pulling over and fining people $200 on the spot for not wearing masks. Like, it was a proper lockdown. People, I don't know what it's like in Ireland though. People got very nearly kind of strict on each other as well. So you'd often hear about people who'd ring the cops or complain about house parties happening and stuff. So
that's happening
like,
wholesale.
There was a view though, if we're all in lockdown, we're all in this together, kind of like no one's breaking it. And I, to be honest, I think that was one way people were venting frustration as well, because it's not normal life, right?
No.
I think even on that, sorry about that, Dean, I think even on that point, you said that some people went over the top even with policing it. You know, it even got to the point of where people took it as their responsibility to police it when that was the wrong approach. And some people were laxy-daisy about policing it, which was also the wrong approach. There was never a happy medium. It was the extreme or the very little. You know, you were going to say, Dean?
No, just on that point, you can't really blame anyone if they're doing on both sides of the extreme, because we don't really know what we're doing at the end of the day. So just like, Brendan, you kind of came to my attention because you commented a few weeks back with the accents and stuff like that. So obviously, if anyone is in Australia dodging the gym, or if anyone has any questions, they can just stick a comment in the on Facebook or something like that, and it'll pop up. You can ask Brendan any questions if they wish.
Yeah, I think as well, Brian, we might get that video ready for the next point. But one positive is, and while it was very strict, Brendan, for you guys with the lockdown, what I hope people get from tonight's show is that while, yes, it's shit at the moment, not just in Ireland, but everywhere from the normality, we're kind of changing a small bit. Like, we're going to bring up a video, I think was it last weekend, Brendan? You took a video. You obviously were celebrating your anniversary, and you posted this video on your Twitter. Is this like the norm now for you for socializing?
So it definitely wouldn't be the norm for us. Like, I'm still a bit skeptical, you know, like, you know, the Australian Open has just started yesterday, I think. It kicked off yesterday. And you'll see in the crowd, like the Rod Laver Arena, it's not packed. Like, we would have gone every year, you know, for the last X amount of years. And this year I might just let it off, you know, so I'm still a bit nervous about the crowds, you know, because we still have 1 or 2 cases floating about. But yeah, that video, we came out of a restaurant, and like, one good thing now that the doors are back open, people aren't sitting on top of you anymore. I quite like that. You know, I think it comes with age. But when we walked out of this restaurant and looked across the road, so this is on a street called Smith Street in Collingwood, right? It's a place where a lot of hipsters hang around, and you'll play it there in a moment, Brian. But like this is eye-opening when you think of like the queues. People are standing right on top of each other. I don't know, lads, there are about 200 people, no masks. And like, that still kind of scares me, given the 7 months of strict lockdown that we just went through, you know.
Yeah, we might roll it there, Brian, as they say in the late show. That's just mad.
And even on that now, Brendan, what you were saying there about that while ago, do you think your skepticism comes from your ties with Ireland directly? You know, what's going on over here, or what people are talking about over here? Or do you think it's just every Australian in general?
I think that I was listening to was it the show last week or maybe the week prior, and you guys are asking each other the question, if tomorrow, okay, all restrictions were lifted, would you go straight back to life pre-COVID? And I think there's some people that are like, yeah, very much, why not, right? Whereas there's others that are a bit like, you know, a bit apprehensive, a bit cautious, want to give it a few weeks or months just to see how things go. Like I haven't been into a nightclub in years. I know, Brian, you're a big fan of places like the Catwalk and stuff, but
Oh, that
like
looks
for
like
me,
the for Airdens, yeah.
Exactly. So like we don't kind of go places like that, but a couple of weeks ago was the McGregor fight, and we walked in, and that was my first time in 12 months being in a very busy place. And I put up a live Insta story, and the amount of comments we were getting from people in Cork going, like, this looks alien to us. I don't know if we'll ever get back there, but I guess I'm hopefully trying to give a bit of hope throughout this conversation that, like, if you do comply, you know, you're kind of sticking to the restrictions where possible, and you do see that daily case number kind of dropping, like, it should give everybody hope that, you know, not long from now, people will be queuing outside Reardon's or going out to the park for the Munster Championship or whatever, you know.
Yeah, or as it's called now with the new sponsor, the Park, PARK. But like you mentioned there, Brendan, as well about the giving hope. Some people are probably looking at this and saying, okay, like pubs mightn't come back immediately. The amount of people that will come back to work, obviously, with that sector alone will be huge. But like, I think that what you're saying is very true as a person, that you're still kind of a bit iffy in a social, regardless of somebody's take on the virus, that's still going to be there for some people for quite some time, I would think.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And one thing you just said, and I was even reading on the Echo yesterday about like how the Vintner Association think a lot of places will never open up. I think in COVID, for me, we've seen the best of people. We've seen kind of the worst of people too in some instances. But one real positive for me, and I hope the same is happening in Cork and Ireland, is people supporting local. You know, you're going to your butcher and you're going to your local grocer and things like that. But I found this the same with bars. And there's bars over here and restaurants who pre-COVID, no one ever went there, you know, whereas now I think people are all very comfortable to stay in their own suburb, their own area. So rather than going out in town, they're staying local. So I actually think a lot of places, I know it sounds strange saying this, but have actually done well out of this whole restrictions and lockdown. And it's a way of easing people out. Like, I'm much more comfortable in a venue that has a capacity of, let's say, 30 people as opposed to 300 people. You know?
So like that would be like Hillbillies.
Oh,
Yeah.
Hillbilly. What's Hillbillies?
Oh yeah, well yeah, that don't drive on. Just even on that point, when you said people made a lot of money out of this, there's one tweet I just came across. Basically, you say, as a Victorian, I recommend you read below as to how I and we really feel. You don't get to do this. You were not on our side. Your entire horrendous corporation made our lockdown way harder than it needed to be. You attempted to undermine it, and now you're doing damage control. We see you. What's that in reference to, or who's that really about? Any more on that?
Lads, I thought politics wasn't playing a role in today's
Well, it's not
conversation.
really politics. It's more curiosity on what you said, you know.
That's
And I said,
Daniel Levy. He's talking about
I'll
Spurs.
expand on that. I just need to go and put my tinfoil hat on.
Yeah, no, good one, Brian. So I'll tell you what that's about, right? So it's a very interesting one. So there's a federal government here in Australia, okay, and we have a prime minister or whatever. But then each state has their own head of state. And I think that that guy, David Milner, if you kind of click into that, I'm sure that this is all coming from one of the Sydney-based newspapers, the Australian, saying that they recommend that the Australian of the year is the Victorian People. Okay. And if you read into it, it's very condescending because we live in Victoria. Okay. That's the state where Melbourne is. And we became known as Sictoria, you know. 909 people have died from COVID in Australia, the whole of Australia. But I reckon 90% of those deaths was here in Melbourne. And when we had that 7-month strict lockdown, Queenslanders, people up in Sydney, WA, they were living their lives, you know. And it was nearly like nearly all of these newspapers, they're all aligned to one political party or another. And these particular guys were nearly all judging Victoria, and rather than having any compassion or empathy, going, guys, there's a lot of there's a lot of people losing their jobs. There's a lot of hospitality businesses that are actually going out of business. Things are actually really bad. Mental health issues have spiked. Domestic violence has spiked. So rather than actually than focusing on that, they made the whole thing political and kind of like, basically hammered the state for the whole 12 months. So I think that was a backlash from the Victorian people saying, actually, lads, you've no idea what we went through. And how dare you now kind of do this massive U-turn and kind of nominate us as being the Victoria or People of the Year. So yeah, there was an element to that, whereas at least in Ireland, at least everybody has the same restrictions, that you're not looking across the border down in Kerry, and they're out traveling from Dingle to Killarney, etc.
So on that note, lads, we'll move on and we'll take a quick break and we'll be back after this.
Hi everybody, it's Alan from Unity here, and we're asking you if you'd like to get involved. If you're a community group, sporting organisation, or indeed a business you'd like to take part, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact us on our usual social media platforms, of course our website unitymedianetwork.com.
G'day, mate. Let's put another shrimp on the barbie.
I have to play that one.
That's brilliant.
He's getting the €2 worth. He's getting those €2 worth.
I know you're only from what you call purgatory, between the real countryside and the city in Inniscarra. It's like that suburb. So we want to be city, we don't want to be city, all that. But anyway, Dean.
That's the way to abandon. That's when you're nearly to abandon, when you're going through Inniscarra. So, when you go on holidays or if you travel abroad and stuff like that, you're always destined to meet someone that you actually know. Now, I'm sure we think, I've never been to Australia. I think that everyone and that's Irish are all in the same place. They all hang around with each other. You have an interesting story about someone that you met and you're quite close to, that you knew in Ireland, and it took you going away from Ireland to meet them and form a relationship. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, as I was saying at the start of the show, I went to study up in Dublin, Dublin City University, and I did business studies, kind of broad enough. It's the classic, I don't know what I want to do apart from hurling, so I'll do some generic kind of course. So I shared a lot of lectures with people across, finance, accounting, things like that. And kind of kept to myself and the lads kind of in college. But anyways, fast forward maybe 6 years, and I go on a Tinder date up in Sydney. And our first date, we found out very quickly that we shared the same lectures in Dublin, but we'd never spoke. Now, I remember her, she doesn't remember me, so I don't know what that's saying about the situation. But our first date was essentially, how do you know such a fella? And she'd be like, well, he was in my class. And I was like, I lived with him for 2 years, So no, small world. So Miriam's from Navan. She's a good egg.
Yeah, there
she is. That's literally 2 minutes before I popped a question over in Champagne, actually.
Oh, lovely. That's why I said I bring it up. I was like, that looks like a very special photo.
No, that's
she doesn't look like she's under.
They bring that around them all the time.
It doesn't look
Brian,
like she's
thank
under
God.
arrest. Anyway.
Yeah, thank God you didn't bring up an ex or something.
Oh, will I bring one up now? Will I go back? How far did I go back?
Just something there.
If anybody out there knows Brendan, it's Brian at unitymedianetwork.com. Send me on photos before 9. Thanks.
We'll get you give a few shout outs there in a couple of minutes, but just bringing in a message there. So one of our good friends, Damien Treenan or Samian Treenan. So this is a question for you, Brendan. As one ginger to another, you might give Alan some tips on how to look as good as you, Brendan. Slick, my man. I'm just picking up on one thing, Brendan. Would it be to do with the fact that you live near a beach and you go to the gym every morning when I'm literally on my last stream turning over about winning the Euro Millions?
Yeah, I don't know. Thanks for the comment. I don't know what to say to that. But yeah,
he's a fan. He loves gingers.
I am. I live near a beach, but I have a window when I can go to the beach, and it's either very early or late in the evening because I am prone to sunstroke. So we might leave that one there.
Yeah, there's a question there actually, Dean. You might read it out from James Toomey.
Yeah, so James Toomey, who was on the show a few weeks back, says, does Australia have a flu season like Ireland does?
James, not really. Like there's a time in the year where we get our flu jabs and stuff, but nothing like home.
What is the one thing, I know we were bantering about like hillbillies, but what is the one or two things that you personally kind of miss about either Cork as a county or like the city? What are the things you kind of look at and say, "Oh, I'd love that now"?
So definitely family. We'll take the family box. That's a given, right? Family and friends. But the two things, right, that always come to mind is food and sport, right? So from a food perspective, like when I go home, I wander. And as I said to you, sometimes like it takes me up to Bracken's for the Millie Philly. Like like if there's one thing I could have right now, it would be a Millie Philly. No custard, cream and jam all the way. Pink one especially. Where else? Hillbillies. Like hillbillies is unreal. So I try and tell Australians about hillbillies, but I think they get so caught up in the word hillbilly, so they think of rednecks in America. So that doesn't really translate. And we'd have our own traditions at home of, you go to certain places for the Chinese, and there's certain pubs that do a brilliant like soup and sandwich or the carvery, etc. From a sport perspective, I think it's more like I love all sports, and used to following the intermediate and senior hurling championship a lot before I emigrated. Love football. Used to go to the Cross with my good mate Patrick Buckley. I'll give Bucks and Barry Stevenson a shout out there. We used to go to the Cross a lot. Used to go away games with them as well. But really, it's that that Super Sunday where you go down to the pub and you might have your lunch or your carvery or whatever, and you might have a midday or a 1 p.m. kickoff, and then that might go on to a 3 p.m. kickoff or an evening kickoff. And like at the moment, it's the Six Nations, so like they're all magical times. And when you're living in Dublin, I know this is about Cork. But you have the Scots that come, you've got the Italians that come, and there's just a brilliant vibe. But I think that the thing that I miss definitely the most, stripping it all back, is the people in Cork. Like we have a sense of humor that it doesn't even translate up in Dublin.
Oh.
And I kind of like that as well. It's kind of our thing. And I know we get slagged that we're being quite parochial and everything else, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
I know you're quite active on social media, so where can people actually catch up on your stuff? Because Alan mentioned you to us, so I started following you and having a look through your tweets and stuff like that. So you are quite active on it. On Instagram, we saw your Instagram post there as well. So where can people catch you on social media?
Yeah, so it is, and I'll post it as a comment on the Facebook group if anyone then wanted to click in. So as you said at the start, which is quite embarrassing, so I'm Banter Panther on Twitter, and just Brendan Moynihan then on Instagram. So
where does the Banter Panther come from? Is it like one of these trolls that you hide behind, or what's the situation with it?
No,
he can't hide anymore. He's not telling you.
That's trying to get it out of him.
Not at all, but like lads, life's too short, and we shouldn't take anything too seriously. And I know you're saying I'm quite active, and you pulled out a tweet where I was probably having making a point, but generally it's lighthearted stuff, and like a lot of it is keeping my finger on the pulse of what's happening at home as well. I don't want to lose my sense of Corkness or my identity either.
Well, I think, Brian, if you can find that one, you definitely won't lose your sense of Irishness anyway with a ginger beard. But there was one photograph that was, your beard was kind of fairly long. I don't know if Brian can bring that up there, but I think as well that the reason we're kind of throwing it out to people to follow you is that it's just you're looking at us and looking at other people and your friends and your family to keep in touch with what's happening at home. But for people like myself and Brian and Dean that have never been to Melbourne or Australia, it gives us that local angle of he's from Cork. Oh, there you are there now, look.
Yeah.
And what jersey is that?
The Rabbitohs. That's the club that Russell Crowe owns.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
He owns the club.
Yeah.
Yeah, he owns the club. So that's NRL. It's one of those ones when you live in Sydney, they're big into NRL. Whereas down in Melbourne, they're obsessed with AFL, so the Aussie rules. So it was one of those ones, like I miss not being able to talk about the Premiership. Definitely can't talk about GA over here. So yeah, you try
I'd fit right in over there, so I'd fit right in. I've no interest.
And is there any kind of like, I won't say a club, but is there anything like wherever you live that there's other people from Ireland that you've your own, but if there is a GA match on, say pre-COVID, that you go down and have a pint and watch the match, it might be in real time, but it might be shown again in an Irish pub or something like?
Yeah, so the one thing that I'm useless now when it comes to GAA, like I can mention Huggy from the Cork senior team. That's about it. I've lost them, and there's an Inniscarra boy in the team as well. But I've lost it all because I've no one to talk to about it. But I don't know if you lads remember when Satanta Halpine left Cork, he joined Carlton, and
right.
since we've had Kieran Sheen from Airog and a few other lads. So even before I came out here, Carlton became my AFL team. And there's a few other Cork lads. We've kind of adopted Carlton, so we go to all the games together. But no, I'm obsessed with that. Like I travel. We've a flight booked in a few weeks' time, whether we can go now or not, to go and see them up on the Gold Coast. So I've actually got a flight tomorrow up to Sydney, and I'm kind of freaking out because I haven't been on a plane in 12 months. So again, I'm kind of like going, do I need my passport or not? What's the process again?
Is travel kind of okay, like normal now, or what's the crack with it? Is it lower? Is it reduced capacity?
No, look, Brian or Alan, it could change tomorrow, but as of now, I get to fly tomorrow with no permits. Whereas a colleague of mine, he lives down in South Australia, he drove across the border yesterday and he needed a permit to come into the state and likewise a permit to get back home. So it's still like, basically, what's good about Australia is we have these mini little outbreaks and they shut us down into, pretty much full lockdown again for a couple of days, and it kind of kills it. So it does work. We have the formula down now, but just fingers crossed they start rolling out these jabs. Myself and Miriam will be in the last group to get them because, we're low risk and we're healthy and stuff. But hopefully in 2021. And actually, lads, you said something earlier about like shout outs. The only one I'd want to say, and my little sister Jennifer, she's a part of this, is just to all the healthcare workers. Like Jennifer is a midwife. She's based up in Mayo General. And again, I think a lot of people are suffering. A lot of people are having it really hard. But then remember the people who are on the front line as well. And that's probably the only shout out that I want to give because I hear her stories, a couple of times a week, and like it's bad. It's bad out there,
Yeah, with the people that are in the healthcare, because we'd only live it when we're going to the shop, or if we're looking at the window, seeing people walk past with masks on. But they go to work and they live it for 12-hour shifts. So obviously they're doing a little bit more then as well if they need to cover and stuff like that. So they're living it way more than us. So they're the ones that are really struggling. So they are. Big shout out to all of them.
There's a lot of what you call frontline workers. The guy working for Fastway is a frontline worker, if you ask me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The postman, on bus, everything, fire brigade. The guards, everybody is
retail store.
Retail stores, everything.
Yeah.
Now, just even you said, look, about hillbillies. I'm sure there's another guy you probably missed. I have a video of him here if you'd like to see him. We all remember him. Good old days, Cork City.
Hey, Dancing Dave.
I love it. Love it enough.
Right on.
Anyway, just said I'd bring that up now just for the joy of it.
Dave is a legend in Cork, and people like now we'd love to see Dancing Dave because it means we're back into shops or whatever. And I know just on a follow-on note there, you mentioned about the frontline workers. Just weekend gone, myself and Brian and Dean were working on getting some promotions for charities as well. That they're on the front line. But before we wrap up, I suppose you kind of gave the shout outs, but if you could come back to Cork tomorrow for a weekend, what's the first couple of things you would do? So we're back to normal, pubs are open, restaurants are open. What would you do? So you've met the family, seen all the friends. What would you do?
Yeah, so I think what I would do is just walk around town, literally spend the whole day walking. Like I don't know, I'm obsessed with Shandon. I've got the Shandon bells tattooed in my arm. I would walk around the English market. Yeah, like just walking. I think I've got just a much stronger appreciation for Cork now that I've moved away. Even when I was living in Dublin, and like for me, it's not about even landmarks. It's like around the small streets up around Shandon and stuff. Like even around Blackpool, just love it. Like walking aimlessly on my own. Like it's something that I get a lot of like a really big buzz when I'm home. So yeah, like nothing major, nothing big or extravagant. Just walking around and just stopping to have the coffee and stopping for the hillbillies and, just soaking it all in. And even just like for me, right, I come home and I'm in a bit of a daze. Even just people watching in Cork, like we are different, and I just love the buzz and pan, down Oliver Plunkett Street. And, it's, probably very, very simple, Alan. Yeah, for sure.
You're probably one of these weirdos that go to pennies. That's what it seems like.
Definitely not.
There's a queue for pennies. My God, that was murder.
I know. I seen that.
Well, we'd know whose brains would be eaten in a zombie apocalypse anyway. If that was their priority, was getting stockings and cheap underpants.
Brilliant.
I understand the toilet roll, but doomsday preppers would be looking at these people silly. But anyway, look, Brendan, thanks very much for joining us. I'd say, lads, we'll wrap it up at that.
Thanks again. As I said, like it's good for us to reach out to people from Cork. We're from Cork. We're looking to bring people kind of closer to stuff that's going on. And I was intrigued when I saw you following us, saying, that's our way of keeping you closer to what's going on in Cork as part of your interaction. So we appreciate your time and we appreciate the missing the gym. So I know what I need to do. Same in training. I need to get up at fucking 6 o'clock in the morning and walk my 2 dogs that I don't have and go walking down the beach, and I'll have a beard as nice as yours, I'm sure.
Thanks a million for having me on, lads. Sorry to cut you across, Dean. But like, as I said, like, no, it's brilliant. And like, even myself, I'll actively be recommending people follow you guys just to keep your finger in the pulse. The same as I do with the 2 Norries, which what I'm a big fan of as well.
Yeah.
All of these things are fantastic. Sorry,
you remember the boys and girls in Lock as well, I think, as well, because that's where
just only recently. Yeah, so Brendan, thanks for coming on, because I have a couple of friends over in Australia, and it's something that I probably don't ask them is, what are you missing from home? It's really, how are you getting on, the usual stuff, how are the kids? But so give it a bit of insight into what life is like in Australia and what you guys are feeling when you're over there, because you are missing home. Even though we might be missing each other because we're stuck indoors, but you're thousands and thousands of miles away, and you probably only get home once a year, so you're planning for next year to see if you might be able to even come home to see your family. So thanks for coming on, and thanks for taking the time to have a chat with us.
And if you meet any of them on the streets of Melbourne, Dean will text you the name. Each one of them owe him a tenner.
Euros. I want so it's a little bit higher over there, so euros, not dollars.
We'll say goodbye, all right, and we'll say g'day, mate.
G'day, mate.
And just on that, we'll do the cheeky winning streak wave.
This is the highlight of the show for everybody, Brendan.
This is what he can.
G'day, mate. Let's put another shrimp on the barbie.